The SEGA Saturn was such an interesting system. There was just so much about it that you would hear in the schoolyard, or you would hear from friends. It was 32-bit, it could do stuff with CDs, it had a cartridge slot and all this stuff. And I just remember reading about it in video game magazines and seeing screenshots and just thinking it was the coolest thing that was going to come out. But unfortunately, it didn't live up to a lot of expectations, and it sort of was a flash in the pan and ended up failing, at least here in the United States.
When we were asking about, oh, what do you want for Christmas? And my parents were like, okay, well, what do you want? And I just said, I want a Sega Saturn. I'm like, wait, didn't we just buy you a Sega console, the 32X? Like, yeah, but there's no more games coming out for it. And I'm like, really? The thing died in a year? Yeah, we're not buying any more Sega products.
I remember parents actually telling me that I should get a PlayStation instead, and I was like, no, and then realizing that maybe I should have done, but never mind, we stuck with the Sega.
I am a proponent for the underdog, I know it's kind of a big term now, but the hidden gem. The ones that don't really get a whole lot of love, that I think should get more love. And to me, I think there's no other system that epitomizes that than the Sega Saturn. And its library pretty much speaks for itself. It's got some of the strangest and the quirkiest games, but it also has some of the most beautiful and most hardcore games out there, especially like for some of the more rarer and harder to get titles. It's like, yeah, they are rarer, they are a little bit pricier, but man, do you really get what you pay for?
Nights into Dreams was an unbelievable experience. That game was so good. I think typically games that try to be that abstract are usually too caught up in their own ideas to deliver an experience that actually hits on all ends. But Nights really does it. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's fun to move around in, the music is amazing.
The controller itself, this is my favorite controller. The 3D one that came with Nights was kind of made for Nights with the analog stick that's a 3D stick, whatever you want to call it, but it's just super comfortable. Obviously the inspiration towards the Dreamcast controller and then the Xbox controller, maybe that'll stay on the shelf there. There's my face. My favorite Sega Saturn game, though, is definitely Saturn Bomberman, which is an insane thing. This one's up to 10 player, though. It uses the crazy multi-tap. Gamers and non-gamers alike, that I was just like, this is an easy game, let's hop in and go. But having a 10-player match of this just was nuts, and the frenetic feeling of that entire match was so cool and so much fun. The fact, and this is like post N64 with 4 controllers, having 10 people play a game at once was just nuts and amazing.
You can't talk about the Sega Saturn without talking about this game, bro. Come on. You know what I'm gonna say. Virtua Fighter was aight. But Virtua Fighter 2? Oh, come on, man! The jump from Virtua Fighter to Virtua Fighter 2 is smooth as butter! The game came out around 95 and the Saturn was kicking this thing at a steady 60 FPS, more combos, more characters. The floodgates for fighting games were open on this thing. You get Street Fighter Alpha, Fighting Vipers, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Last Bronx, Golden Axe Duel, Marvel vs. Street Fighter, and then, my favorite, Fighters Megamix.
Fighters Megamix brought two of the games that I loved the most, like ever, like Virtua Fighter 2 and Fighting Vipers together. It was like an extremely joyful feeling to go through all those arcade mode routes and see which characters were coming, which characters were getting unlocked from other brilliant Sega franchises like Sonic the Fighters, Virtua Cop 2, Daytona USA, even the AM2's logo, and Rent a Hero. I think that was Rent a Hero's debut in the West, and just going through all of those one by one and finding out who was the next character to unlock, that was an amazing experience.
My family couldn't afford every single console that came out, so what helped was having like 10 million cousins in the same city, and every everyone had like a different console. So mine and my older brothers, we were the PlayStation household. So, and then other cousins were like the SNES and the Super SNES, and then I had another cousin who lived relatively close, and she had the Sega Saturn. My experience playing that game, I don't know what game it is, we cannot figure it out for the life of us. It was a fighter game. It was actually my first fighter as a kid, and I remember playing the living heck out of it with my cousin, and it was really fun, and I literally would only want to go over there just to play the Sega Saturn with her.
I tend to lean more to the more colorful and more unique kind of types of games out there, and I can really say it kind of started with the Saturn for me. And not to say that, you know, other games that came out at that time, like the PlayStation and whatnot, didn't have games like that, but the Saturn's library is one of a kind. I mean, it seriously is just, it's a chef's kiss of everything from your basics to your hardcore, and that's just what it was.
遊びの道に魂込めた一人の男が今日も行く真面目に遊ばぬ奴らには体で覚えさせるぞ
It influenced me by, you know, wanting to meet the people who made these games, like Takashi Oda from like the House of the Dead. He was the director of the series. It's just people like that who's been like, you know, like a huge influence. It made me want to like, you know, go travel and interview them at like places like E3 or, you know, maybe one day Tokyo Game Show. It's just been like a huge influence in my life.
I think the Sega Saturn left behind a good legacy. It still resonates with people all over the world, man. The console launched 25 years ago, and we're still seeing new titles inspired by Saturn games coming out now. We have Balan Wonderland coming out next year. Virtua Fighter is getting an esports league. The original Panzer Dragoon just got remade for every major platform. Sakura Wars got its own anime, along with a new console game and a mobile game. Do I even need to talk about how 3D Sonic continues to live on? About all the money Sega has made off of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise because they experimented with Sonic in 3D on the Sega Saturn?
I think it's an awesome system. I wish it would have lasted longer. I wish we would have seen stuff like Sonic Extreme and some other titles that were promised for the system, but I know its legacy lives on, and I still like the Sega Saturn, and I think because of that, I still like Sega as a company.
Well, it was the only 32-bit console that I played, so it was clearly my favourite over the PlayStation because I had nothing else to compare it to.
The Sega Saturn lives on through the hearts of men and women and little blue hedgehogs.